Okay, today we're going to go back a little bit farther than we normally do. We're going to a site known as Kamyana Mohyla. And what we're looking at the bottom here is the Black Sea, and this is just above it. We all know about Egypt that dates back to possibly a little over 5,000 BC. We know about Catalhoyuk, which would be over in this range, that is dating to 6,800 BC. We know about Sumera, that's down right over here, that actually dates somewhere around 7,200 BC, perhaps, at least 5,400. We also know about Gobekli Tepe, that's out in this region right here, and Gobekli is dated to around 8,000 BC, or a little over 10,500 years ago. We look at this site here, and it's a site that's 22,000 years old. They've radiocarboned pieces of actual cooking, things that people have done there. So a few interesting things about this ancient burial mound. It's kind of like Ukraine's Stonehenge. It's the oldest known sanctuary or observatory in the world that anybody's found. It predates Adam's ring. It's nicknamed the Stone Library. It contains petroglyph tests at 22,000 BCE, describing social constructure, beliefs, and rituals. No traces of human settlement at Kamyana Mohyla. It served as a more remote sanctuary, closely associated with Catalhoyuk and Sumeria, before the Black Sea even flooded, and it is called Shu-Nun. Now, the original name of Sumer was Shumer, because Semitics put an H with their SH, and so Shu-Nun is Su-Nun, and then you have Sumer. Well, Mer is the ocean, and it's always known as water also. It's a common name for like a sea, as in mermaid and maritime and things along that line. So they called their country Aratta. And so that takes Aratta, which is actually where you find Nimrod Dog and you find Gobekli Tepe, and these things right around that centralized area that date back to 10,000 now are thrown back to twice that much. And Aratta is talked about, if you've studied Sumerian, quite a bit. It's the lords of Aratta. It's where Enki and them say they originally came from before they came down and settled the fertile valley that's there. Now, it's thousands of years before Stonehenge, before Giza, before the Indus Valley or Sumer that they spawned. And it's kind of the key to understanding perhaps the origin of civilization. Now, this is from a showing that's going on in the Ukraine about this, and it's something that people don't normally get to see. This man right here is Dr. Hooker. And he is an archaeologist that's been studying the site for quite some years and working with some of the specialists that are there, and has came up with a presentation for it, and it's totally accepted through the people of his presentation, totally. And so they're going to allow it to come out, and it really only comes out. It's something that we don't really talk about here. We all know about Gobekli Tepe now because we have archaeologists that are attached into our network that are attached to it, but then this doesn't have very many Western scholars going out there, and indeed this Western scholar is working with the Russians and with the Ukrainians on the endeavor, and not really with an American team or a European team, although he's allowed to show it. Now, one neat thing about this place is it starts off with these dolmenish type statues that are out here, and they have their statues, priestess looking statues, and it looks like this is much more of a female oriented or matriarchal society, but this is a huge mound here of megalithic stones all stacked up, and it's destroyed. Now, one comparison here is that it's much bigger than Stonehenge. If you were to take Stonehenge from this exact point of view and put it up there, Stonehenge would be this mere amount here that just came up compared to the size of this. And so it's quite a bit larger than the Stonehenge complex itself, and perhaps whenever they unwrap all of Gobekli Tepe, it's going to be something along that size, but this is more of what they're calling an ancient step pyramid, that had been somehow destroyed, perhaps during a huge cataclysm or a earthquake that had happened and stuff. And so you can see all these giant megalithic stones are all piled up here, basically, and a little bit somewhat in a disarray, but yet you can tell they've been worked, they've been moved, and there's so much erosion that's gone all over these things. It's smoothed them all off, even has fused a few rocks together. You can tell where moisture runs through them and things, and just the calcification has. And people like the Dalai Lama have actually come here, and he professes to him feeling a presence whenever he's there, and something that is primordial about all of mankind. Indeed, they send things, but the neat thing is they have found over 60 little caves that go down up under this. Now, these little caves that they have built up under it, there's a Russian archaeologist that's very much hip with Sumerian stuff, and I've seen a couple of his papers too. And so he is a specialist on symbolism and things, and so you can find that there's this weird symbol in here where it looks like a person is standing inside of an animal with another head, with a hand, but yet it's moving like it's jumping forward, like you see somebody jumping, right? And there's a moon symbol behind him, things like this that are just odd. And then this actually here, believe it or not, is speech. This is the first writing, and a lot of you, if you've ever studied linguistics and stuff, it goes back to this is your first form of linguistics and words and symbolism that starts to turn into slight pictographs after you've made words. So here's the order of things, is that you would be making words and then coming up with these symbols out of those words. Then after you come up with the words, you start drawing a symbol for the sound that the word used to make, if you follow me. And then that is an ideogram or a pictograph. Then the pictographs get changed into things that are like hieroglyphics. The other spread goes to cuneiform. The third form of which is like a Phoenician type of writing that we all still do to this day, that seemed to be a lot more concise and something that a lot of people could grasp a whole lot more than a bunch of stick lines in it. One thing that definitely gives away the age of this place is this is a mammoth. Now, when they were first shown this picture, people tried to discredit this site and tell you that that was a bull. It was a cow. But that got thrown out the door real quick. That right there is not a bull, but it is a bull elephant, and it's a bull elephant. You can see it right there, and that is, of course, an old woolly mammoth. So that easily puts it back at this date. Now, there's a bunch of weird petroglyphs that are on the wall, and so each image too, whenever you look at things like this, each one represents a symbolism, but then there's also images that can be combined together to give a whole ideal, and their spatial relationship to each other gives you some type of representation. And this is very primitive kind of acting, or artistic work or concepts, but yet it gives you an idea. And always there's below creatures, there's an our world, and then there's a heaven. And I'll show you that here in a second, that they have in their stuff in these pictures. And you think this is some little scratching on the wall, but this scratching right here is over 20 foot long. And I'll show you a couple of more of them. Now, there's social versions of this, and then more spiritual versions of things that they have. So they have life things and things that are going on, and philosophy type things and stuff like that are worked in with more of a spiritual aspect. So they've definitely already got that pulled apart. Now, in most of these things, you'll find out the man is the hunter. He's the master of beasts, and this is indeed when people are still hunter-gatherers and haven't quite turned into farmers yet. So here now is that stepping past that zone, and some definite reference that's really not caveman. It's really not ugh. It's got a lot more advancement. Whenever I was a kid, and I'm sure all of us kind of thought that it just peters out and turns into ugh. No, it doesn't. It goes way back into here, where they have places, that the woman is more of the mistress of the forest, and she bestows good fortune on the hunting and things like that, that she's a priestess. And this can lead all the way up into the idea of Inanna and Diana, the priestess of the hunt, Artemis, and things along that line. Now, they have even a place that's known as the Grotto of the Sorcerer. and they have images which women are associated with the hunting, and they're priestesses and everything. So they give magical attributes. They help in success of the hunt. They do things like that. So Artemis, the goddess of hunting, could easily come from there. There's a lot of aspects you see out of this. Some things that they could have perhaps known at the time. Now, in the dual role of women, they're more of the home and the fire. And then there's also women that are the nature of elements. So they try to show you that a woman can be fickle and be this way, that way, this way, that way. And they give you the elements of it. Although they don't find that it represents a four seasons type of aspect. These people seem to think summer and winter and things are one season. There's really only two going on. There's a death that gets cold and come back, and then there's a fruition that runs through, and they haven't put a middle line on either one at that time. There are representations that they do have that show a cardinal 4-point and or a season type of thing, but it looks like those would probably see something that's more on the line of directions, pointing. And indeed, there are constellation dots and star forms that are here that people haven't made total connections with. Now, let me show you this. Now, this is kind of important here, where you can see that they have an idea where they're going to show you that they have an idea of a representation of perhaps the stairway to heaven, a Jacob's ladder, right here, okay? And they have this arcing form that runs, of scratches that run through it, delineating that here are birds and the sun and almost a vortex, right? And this is heaven, right? And then man, mammoths, deer, horses, goats, animals that prance and move and do things or in action are going to be part of the earthly world. And down there at the bottom, you're going to have lizards, serpent, fish, things like that. And here's a lizard and snakes. So definitely you'll see that type of thing. It's kind of a world axis. And the weird, neat thing that I saw about this is, that, of course, so much symbolism here with Jacob's ladder idea, right? There's 12 steps here that go into it before you get into heaven. There's an arc that goes across here that is on an arc, delineating the fact that maybe this is a round planet that they are depicting, that this is going through, that it emanates from a world axis, that it would be a circular form and not a flat earth. So it's kind of neat, but they have these type of depictions here. Now, people used to take and put their bodies, dead bodies, up onto daises and let the birds eat them and fly into heaven. And that's where we get a lot of our representations of that concept of them taking to heaven, and the bird and all that type of stuff, and the birds taking, mankind to heaven. Doves and Inanna is associated with it. There's a lot of symbolism in these things here. There's, 2 horses and a man that's here, and then of course below we have that snake idea. So this is delineating that this is all going on here, and what happened, and a horse and 2 men and a guy that's down. This guy looks like somebody's trying to help him. People are freaking out. Somebody's got a dog. You seeing this? Somebody's a shepherd. Okay, now you go to looking at all these little diagrams, it kind of reveals something to you if you look at it in the layers and in the concepts and try to pick out, here's a picture, because in this picture, it's a death scene and a burial, and here you have a central burial with a marker and stances, right? And you can see that there's a guy with a half a body, right? And so these are back whenever they used to sacrifice bodies, and people that were servants of other people and things like that they had perhaps, and people that were under the king, even through Sumerian times, and even the earliest Egyptians had this deal where they would bury the servants with the dead so they could serve them into the afterlife. You can't really tell what's going on in this picture, but it almost looks like 2 people in a fight or something, and then there's this mark here. Here's another half a dead body, and it's separated for some reason with a symbol over it. Now, oddly, that dead body that's there and there are like probably the sacrificed ones, and then here they are laying next to the casket, right? And you think that this is, little scratches on a wall, but this is 7.2 meters long, right? So it's well over 20 foot long. It's huge. And there's some neat things that are in this pictograph that you wouldn't think that would be here at 22,000 years old. But it dates to it. It was plugged up with sand, and then Down deep in the bottom of it, they found it dated to that. You know, some of these, the bottom parts of this couldn't be anything but 22,000 years old, because the sand was up till here that had the black layer of soot in it that they registered at 22,000 years old. And yet here you see some horses. You see this? And look, there's a cowboy right there. There's a man on a horse. There's an equestrian at 22,000 BC. It's remarkable. You know, there's a weird shape that's up here of other animals that are here, and these, believe it or not, is an ideogram, and these are words. These scratches and lines here are words that have meaning to them. In a minute I'll show you what they've decoded into. And even these dots that are here and here and here and this group here are all constellation spots. And what I find is neat about them is they seem to correlate not only in size of the dots of the holes that are bored into the wall, but the depth. And the deeper a star dot is, the brighter it is in the sky, and the less deep it is, the less. And so it's maybe even a way that you could check and make sure that you're looking at the right stars or something by putting a dowel into each one, but there are definitely different depths, and it seems to correlate to that, which is another fantastic find and something that you thought people were just like crazy. Here again, here's a rhombus, and so it's got that, you know, thing of spatial intelligence where you can tell that they have this idea or concept of area and direction, right? And so looking at it again here, where these people are, what are we looking at here? Well, this place, Shu-Nun, is right here above the you know, the Black Sea. You have over here, you have Tedes. Down here you have Catalhoyuk, which is, you know, 6,800 BC perhaps, maxing out. Famous areas that we all know about, you know, Sumer, Elam. They even have Kitam right up in here that's leading off into more of the Mongolian area and stuff, and it subtrates, you know, 2650, I believe. So you can see how things range, and it even contains, it seems, through the area of Elam, which is ancient Persia. So Sumeria, all this runs through. And I don't know what this runs into, but these people are called Aryans from Aratta, and they're running right into India in the Indus Valley, which is right there. So here we go. And another thing too, these Catalhoyuk people, these people, they seem to maybe have made it right around the corner, just going around here. You can imagine if somebody just went around the Mediterranean and ran into the Nile and ran it up, there's Egypt. And they run it up quite a bit. Now, scientists say that they came out of here and back and forth a few times, or started out here and went through there and back and forth a few times. They're finding way back into the 60 and 125,000 year range and stuff of a rebouncing or a re-going through back. But it seems like as it goes up to the end of the Nile there, or where it leads up to Lake Victoria, it becomes a cul-de-sac where they say it never came down, it never came up. There's a stopping barrier there somehow. But anyhow, just incredibly interesting, this site here, and show you a little bit more about it, because it's going to show you what they say on the walls, and that kind of puts it all together with Sumeria and the gods of Sumer, and perhaps the gods or the inklings of the first gods that came about from any of these areas here, because they have that archaic writing in these spots, by the way, that show the lines. It's been found on rocks, it's been found on walls and things, and quite often people think they're counting off days, they're counting off months, they're going through moons, because a few of them they do find are like a lunar calendar. They're actually showing a moon phase and the days through it, and also the suns, and where the sun will be shining through at a point and hitting the wall where the shadow is formed, so they know when the end of the seasons are. But so here's this scratching, and this is all words, by the way. And if whenever we take this, what becomes real evident is that they know about the Sumerians, or I'll say the Sumerians know about them, since this predates the hell out of it. But she's talking about 8 kid goats, and Inanna, the water, Shu-Nun, the law of fate, right? In Eden, the steps, And indeed, in Sumeria, that's where the name Eden comes from. That's the steppe area where they grew all the food. Ordainment, which are the me's they talk about, right? On earth, Ki is known as earth. Dug is workable land or things that Ama Kalam Dug, mother of blessed country. So this puts you together with Inanna, which people are very aware of. And Inanna is the same goddess. It's the goddess of heaven, Astara. She's Venus. And she is the morning light. She is the star of the morning, and so on. That at one time people believed was two. But then another important thing is another thing that is definitely Sumerian here and drawn through almost an ideogram. So you can see part of these are becoming picturesque. Gat Umdug, these gods, Nindar, Utu, Enlil, Anu. So we haven't found an Enki here yet, but wow. Now Miki is real close to Enki. One line different and one length different, and that could be Enki. But no, it's the ordainment of Ki. And you think these are small scratches, but look at this thing laid out here. And this thing is, 8 foot long and 5 foot tall and carved on a special place on the wall. So it has a placement to it that is, sacred and things. And you can look where they have weird things like a serpent that has little horns on him. There's counting numbers. There's angles. There's all these words over here. And you'll find that here's that sun calendar running across the sky. So they say this is just counting numbers like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 like we do, with scratching the lines. But that's not at all what it is. Whenever people figure this out, Gabnu Unna Tuk Na Ri. Now this is this running across right here. And whenever you transpose that, it basically says the Anunnaki have no equal to themselves. Now, these are Sumerian gods we know from 3500 BC, but this is actually in Aratta, where they talked about their lords of Aratta. Some of them are on seals, just like this, where they're talking to the lords of Aratta. And it dates to 22,000 BC, people. And it has the Anunnaki listed, Anu, Enlil, Inanna, Sumerian gestures, pre-Sumerian writing ideogram scratch that we have found in North America, in South America, and here. And so that might redate some of those other spots too, back from being, this was 4000 BC, maybe. Maybe it was a lot more. Maybe it was, again, somewhere around this range. But I find this to be incredible. It talks about rulers and priests, legal structures, divination by preparing water, capital punishment for people, concepts of sounds, and an afterlife. And again, it talks about these Sumerian gods themselves, and it gives it its own credibility. And then it also adds another credence to the credibility. And I'd like to mention it also shows your credibility with Sitchin's work, where he talked about how he knew they went back much farther. And indeed, they talk about a time before time and a time long time ago. And you wonder if he's making it all up. Well, he didn't know about this. Pretty damn sure he didn't know about this. I mean, but so here's the area that we're looking at is Shu-Nun, and then there's other places that are near it too that people are looking at with river systems, and they still run these festivals every year there that actually, it's odd, but they seem to have something of a Turkish Genghis Khan kind of festival going on, and at the same time it seems to be very much Celtic and very much a Druidic ceremony that goes along with it. Now here's these men that go crazy and do this thing for like 1 minute and stop. It's a crazy little festival. But here's one of the stone circles here that you can see, and it's listed as an exposed step pyramid, okay? And it's the Kurum burial mound that's found right across the river from where the other place is. It's made out of huge granite boulders that have been worked and totally almost melted in erosion over time, if you will. So a slow ice cream melt kind of erosion that's gone on, and they're planted firmly into the ground. So they have quite some age to them now. And they have these lineups here that go with it that they have with that also line up with other stones. And it shows you a summer solstice, a winter solstice. It shows you more of a ending of a cycle and a starting of a cycle whenever you run the stones totally across, or you're looking at not just this circle, but you start looking at another circle and you match those two circles up. This is how it lines up. So you're looking from this main point A here. Let's call this the main one of all, point A. And you look through here, and this is the height of summer. What's neat about this other thing that's over here is this is two circles made of a Vesca Pisces, and whenever you hit the left side of the Vesca Pisces, it's the end of spring, and whenever you hit it over here, it is fall, okay? And so here's another look at that where it's cutting back across, and it's off alignment a little bit too by about 4 degrees. And so that kind of says, you know, hey, were they perfectly aligned, or have they settled over time? You know, earthquake, ground movement, shifting, pole shift, things like that. But it's off by 4 degrees, which is a decent amount, but almost not really. If you kept aiming there, you'd get there pretty close. But then this right here is this, you know, Vesca Pisces. And what they note is that if you look at the relationship of things that are going on, that this one circle would be a sun diameter, this is the sun diameter, and this is the Vesca Pisces created in the center of it. And if you run a line right through the center of that, through the Vesca Pisces, it lines up exactly to that A stone again. So pretty remarkable, you know. And it's a joining also too of two places. This Vesca Pisces, of course, is always the sacred feminine, and this is the goddess, and the other circle is the god, right? And it's an overlay of the whole place around it. I don't know if you see, but it's got a stem going around it, and this also looks somewhat a tree of life, where it's an overlay that you put over it, and you'd say, okay, here's the tree of life type situation that goes on. And also it has more of a genitalia type of thing that also runs around. The whole perimeter of it is a walkway that almost looks like it's been put in much later, but indeed it was there whenever they had originally found the place. And they don't do much maintenance to it. They let it go like this, but try to keep the weeds out of it. Some want to keep it like that. Others want to come in and weed whack the place and then keep it at that groomed state. And they've elected to just leave it raw like this, but to not ever let it get out of hand and to keep it in that state. It's so huge they can't really build anything over it that would protect it so much and stuff like that. But extremely interesting here, people, and it ties Sumerians to this place. It dates at 22,000 BC. And let me know what y'all think in the comments again and stuff. And like, share, and subscribe. And I appreciate y'all. Have a great day.